Hey, it's Antia with the Magnetize the Man Summit, where single successful women crack the attraction code and live their happily ever after. And look, ladies, let's face it, there is no happily ever after if you don't even trust the man, which is why I invited this most amazing expert here with me today, which is Clayton Olson. Hi, Clayton.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
I'm so excited to have this really groundbreaking conversation with you because we really need to tell the truth. Because
Mm,
oftentimes that's really what's kind of left out of the whole conversation in
mm,
dating. So, ladies, let me tell you a little bit about Clayton. He is an international relationship coach, NLP master practitioner, and facilitator. He delivers private virtual coaching sessions and leads online group workshops internationally. You name it, USA, UK, Asia, Australia, for both women and men. And by the way, he has a YouTube channel on relationships with over 7 million views and has had his content featured on Fox News magazine, Huffington Post, and the View TV show, right? That's quite an accomplishment. And let me tell you, people see Clayton when they want to transform their romantic relationships in life, working with all stages of their relationships, including getting started, mending, or even moving on. You know, that happens too. And more importantly, they feel at peace, clear, and happy with their choices they make. So welcome, Clayton.
yeah, thank you. Quite the introduction.
And ladies, you're really in for a treat. This is going to be really deep. So buckle your seatbelts, take a seat, have a hot cup of tea, because this is going to be a really different kind of conversation here. So Clayton, tell us a little bit about why love? Like, how did you get into this? Why you're not like an engineer or you're, you know what I mean, working at a bank or whatever. You could have done so many different things, right? What is it
Yeah,
about that really,
yeah,
just really motivates you?
yeah. Thank you for the question. I love that. And those were all possibilities at one point. I was in my 20s and I was in the corporate world for a while. And I had taken a lot of the self-development and understanding of language and how to influence and social dynamics that I had learned in my late teens and early 20s into the corporate world, thinking, well, I can use all of this to make money and I can be a career salesman and build relationships and really set myself up to have a wonderful life. Now, I had gotten into NLP when I was around 18. My father had passed away of lung cancer, and that was really the catalyst that set me into this journey of really finding out who I was and what kind of man that I wanted to be, because the model for a man had faded into to beyond the veil. So it really was the driving force for me to begin to intentionally create my identity, intentionally begin to understand what a healthy relationship looks like, because I realized I didn't have the best models growing up. So into my 20s, I was in the corporate world, and there was something incredibly sexy and polished about that. And what I found is that I got into my late 20s, I realized that I was craving something and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It was like I was craving some type of authenticity, some type of rawness with the people that I was speaking to. And it wasn't the form or the context for it. And so I really begun to become dissatisfied with what I was doing, and the money just wasn't making any difference anymore for me. I was making more money than I had ever made, yet my soul was completely starved. And what ended up happening is I got sick, and I had to make a decision about whether to stay with the company and continue to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, or whether to move on and start to do something that was a little bit closer to my heart. So, it seems at the time like it happened by accident. However, I think that there is some divine intelligence behind everything, but I ended up working with a friend at the time who had a list of people going through breakups.
Mm-hmm.
And these folks were in incredible amounts of pain. They were looking for closure. Some of them that were looking to repair the relationship. Some of them wanted to move on powerfully and never repeat the same mistakes again. And I just really threw myself into the deep end of the pool and started working with these folks one-on-one. And I really was lucky enough to occupy a very privileged position with them, because I started to see the patterns of what made love work, and also the ways in which people were blocking themselves from being able to go deeper with people, the ways in which we protect ourselves, the ways in which we unintentionally and sometimes very intentionally sabotage out of fear. And after talking and working with over 1,000 people, there's just a matrix that began to evolve, and a certain intuition or spider sense that started to come online around relationship. And talking about relationship, talking about what makes successful relationships work, what makes dating work, what makes being able to be yourself in connection with another work. All of that is so deeply connected with my journey. It's not like I'm sitting over here with all of the answers. This is something that I am deeply entrenched in learning and on the path to, and will probably be on that path my entire life, learning lessons. And I'm incredibly happy that I get to explore this with people and really work on myself in the process. So it makes me feel incredibly alive, and it's something that I've grown to love even more, ironically, being in the love coaching field.
Oh, I love that so much. And that's really what I'm getting about you, Clayton. You're so much about truth and what motivates you. You know, I mean, that's really something that's so different about you, that you're not just about like, you know, the usual mojo, you know, but really like seeing like what's the truth here. Like, that's really the best, like what you see, you called like rawness, right? Like just really this, which really drew me to you, because I'm the same way. I'm like, let's go deep. You know what I mean? Who cares about all this fluff on the outside? Let's tell the truth, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way of putting it. And as you're talking to Antia, I think what we're going to really be uncovering in this video today is some of the foundational elements that are often unseen or just skipped over in effort to get a result in dating with men. And with life. We're thinking, I just want a relationship. I mean, just like, show me how to do it. Just what do I need to do? And what I'm really excited for about today is that we're going to be talking about something that is at the very core of what makes all this work. And that when you have an integrity around the truth, an integrity around truth in your own life, it makes relationships, flirting, dating, all of that comes so much more effortlessly. And there's a way that you can even metabolize the upsets that inevitably happen in dating, with breakups and with lost love, in a way that adds real meaning to it and allows you to move forward and be a better person because of it, not in spite of it.
Oh, I love that. You know, you really take the best and you catapult it. You use it as like, you know, like the rocket ship launching, you know, and use that momentum, you call it, like to metabolize it. I love that so much. Yeah. So Clayton, so let's talk about it. You know, I mean, so many women, they just don't know what is trust. How do I know when I trust a man? Where do I even start?
Yeah, great question. So from what I've seen, the most amount of suffering that happens in relationships happens from not allowing yourself to be fully in. It happens from not allowing your true self to actually come into the interactions, even in the beginning stages of dating. It happens from not being able to speak your truth in relationships with another person. And so how I see trust, just to define it in the background of how it relates to relationship, is really, it is the lifeblood of what makes relationship work. Because in order to make a relationship work, there's a certain amount of risk that one has to put themselves in. If you are going on a date, there's a certain amount of risk that you're putting in. You might risk rejection. You might risk wasting your time. You might risk having your heart broken. And so in order to make anything grow in life, it takes some risk. And what enables you to take risk? Well, what enables you to take risk is there's a certain level of trust there that you are going to be able to do this, that you deserve this, that there is something that's possible that can be created. So what happens when we trust? Let's just maybe talk a little bit about that, because I really want to, in some ways, sell the viewer that's watching this on why trust is so important. When you can trust in dating, in men, in life, it allows you to show up as sexy. It allows you to show up in your full expression of playfulness. It allows you to actually open your heart and for people to see who you really are, so they can determine whether they are compatible and want a relationship with you. Trust is what allows you to reveal those parts of yourself, those vulnerable parts of yourself that people actually connect with. And trust also allows you to actually receive another person's gifts fully as well. And so on the other side of things, if you're not trusting, if there is this kind of guilty until proven innocent mentality that you have in your dating life, how people and the impact that it will have on men is that they will see you as someone that it almost takes too much work. It comes off as it's this veneer of baggage that is just, it's too hard to break through. It can also impact a man where he may feel like it's just too much of an uphill battle, and he will experience a sense of inadequacy when he's with you, whether he articulates that out loud or not. So it really gets in the way and stifles the connection. So that's the benefit of trust. I'm just going to pause right there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I really love the reflection from you about the inadequacy that a man feels. Like, I've never heard that before. Can you say a little bit more about that, like what that actually means for a man?
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer. I mean, I will draw from my own personal experience as well as the hundreds of guys that I've worked with, but men on some deep level are either they say this, either they have the language around it or not, but they're wanting to impact the woman that they're with. They're wanting to feel that they can either impact her emotionally, physically, spiritually, that there's some place in her life for him, that there's some way that he can, in many ways, penetrate through her defenses into her presence, and there's a place for him there, and for him to be seen and for him to be held. Mm-hmm. And if there's no trust there, there's almost this impenetrable defense that he comes into contact with the woman. And what often happens, and this is a result of a woman that's not trusting, is the men that are committed to, say, breaking through that defense are typically conquestors. Guys that are like really looking for the challenge, but once they get the challenge, they leave the woman after that. So the defense of not trusting can often attract the wrong type of guy. And this is another, let's just say, disadvantage of not trusting, is that you end up attracting other people that are not trusting as well. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're just confirming perhaps more negative beliefs you have about men, given the way that you're showing up in dating.
You know, that's such a good point, that that conqueror, or whatever we want to call him, is actually maybe not even trusting himself as well, that he is just acting because of societal pressures, or maybe he was part of a football team or whatever, right? But he's actually not checking in with his heart or his integrity as a man. Am I really interested in this woman, or I just want to be, we see that on so many, bachelorette, things like that, right? Where it's just like, it's just this one bachelorette, so we're all pursuing her, no matter if we like her or not. So it's like coming from this ego versus really, am I really truly interested in this woman?
Yeah. And he might not be being honest about it either. Even if he is just interested in say, just a casual hookup, he might not be actually saying that because he's not trusting that is valid within him. So he's not even being honest, which just perpetuates this, the experiences that many people watching this might have had of, well, men just want sex and men just want this and that. And it's easy to find evidence for that. It really is easy to find evidence for that if that's what you're looking for. But the invitation in this is to begin shifting your perspective so that you can start to find and look for the type of men that are actually in line with the things that you want in life, because they are out there.
That's such a breakthrough. I mean, ladies, I just want to pause it for a second and just really take that in, what Clayton just said. Like that maybe you were about the alpha male who pursues you, and, but then, and I hear that from my clients too, that say, well, he pursued me, but then he just kind of didn't communicate for a whole week after we went on the first few dates.
Yeah.
So what can a woman do to now shift that? Maybe not necessarily with this particular man, but to start attracting men that not only she can trust, but also who trust themselves. Mm-hmm. Like men who trust themselves.
Right. So I've broken it into 3 categories, and we can touch on each one and hopefully point in the direction that can get people to begin moving towards this on the path. Yeah. And it's just something to begin contemplating, looking at in your own life, just perhaps beginning to open up some of these distinctions and notice what you can start to live into more fully.
Mm.
So the first one is being able to trust in yourself. The second one is being able to start to trust men. And the third one is to be able to trust in life. And I would say that all of these happen concurrently, but we can talk about each one of them and what that begins to look like. Because when you're able to trust in self, you're able to trust in him, and you're able to trust in life, relationship has oil on it at that point, and things start to move into place. And where I would say that it really does start, though, is in being able to trust yourself. One way that I see that women and men don't actually trust themselves is that the first thing they do, the first way that they actually betray themselves and break trust with themselves is by trying to be what someone else wants. Because they're not actually trusting themselves that they are good enough to be good enough for the other person. So they are not trusting their value if they were to show up fully with, say, their needs, their wants, their boundaries, the things that they really want. And what ends up happening is, because they're not voicing those things, is they may start to contort who they are and notice how the other person responds and try to be and chameleon whatever it is that they think the other person wants, so they can be that. And right there, they've created the first violation in themselves, which is they're not trusting in themselves now. And now if they're not trusting in themselves, how is the other person actually supposed to trust them? Right? Because men pick up on this, right? If you are conforming and twisting and turning your way, if you're trying to act more cool than you really are, and when I say cool, what I mean is you're trying to act emotionally non-reactive, or
right.
You're valuing comfort and avoiding pain in a relationship rather than being able to be in line with the truth. People feel this, and then suddenly, if they can't trust you because you're not trusting yourself, then how can you actually take the relationship and the connection deeper if there's a lack of vulnerability?
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so true. And I always feel like hearts talk to each other, like unconsciously, right? We just know. I used to be like this when I was like even little, and I would know when a speaker was authentic and when not, and I couldn't tell why, but I just didn't feel moved. And every time when I was moved, I was like, I don't know, I don't trust this person, right? And I feel like we can only move someone actually when we're congruent. What do you think about that, Clayton?
I love that. Yes, you put it so eloquently. We can only move somebody when we are congruent. Absolutely. And so what this comes down to, I would say, if we're looking now, we're talking about the concept, and if we were to put this into almost a tactical commitment of one that I want to invite people into, is to start trusting yourself by telling the truth. Start telling the truth in your life. Notice the places where you're lying to other people. Notice the places where you're lying to yourself, and commit to no longer doing that. Because what we're wanting here is for you to develop a right relationship with the truth. And you can't have a right relationship with the truth if you're denying it in your own life. So what that means is, in a relationship, it might be that you need to say when you're upset. You need to be able to draw clear boundaries when you feel the need to. You need to ask for closeness when you want it, right? Not demand it, right? There's ways of doing this. Not making the other person wrong or accusing them, but right, being able to genuinely ask for what you need in a relationship. And if it is space that you're needing, being able to ask for space. Begin to notice in life where you're abandoning yourself and your heart because you're afraid of maybe the other person leaving. And I'll say this, look, if you lose yourself, if you abandon yourself in dating, if you abandon your truth in a relationship, it's not going to be that much long after when your partner abandons you, because they're just going to follow suit.
Such a good point. Every time when women get cheated on, they come to me, or when they get being left out of the sun, that's my first question, is like, when did you leave yourself? Because you left yourself like years ago. And I say,
wonderful.
Right, I didn't speak up after the second date, that I didn't like that he picked me up late, or whatever it is, right? And so it starts so small, and then it builds, right? It becomes a hurricane energy.
I love it. You got it. Yep. And what I like a lot about that question of where did you abandon yourself, and asking that to help them switch the focus, is by doing that, you're asking them to get out of the role of being a victim and into one of taking responsibility and seeing how perhaps they had their share in contributing to the overall dynamic. And the beauty of that is actually beginning to get on the right path to trusting again. Because if you just feel like you're a victim to everything going on, then where's your power? Where's your power to be able to change it moving forward? But if you start to see yourself as a creator in some of these tragedies that may happen, then you can start to be the one that changes them and shifts them in your own life and doing something differently.
Yeah, it's really about like, taking ownership, being the steward of your own life, and really letting go of this whole, he did this to me, or life happened, and you're taking on this sort of passive role.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And one thing that I did with Brody, like when we started dating, I just really caught myself how I wanted to manipulate him. I'm going to be really transparent here. And I want to make him feel guilty because I knew he's a really great guy and he wants to make me happy. But instead of doing that, I said, well, what am I going to do with that now? I told him, I said, I just want to manipulate you. And he's like, really? How did you want to do that? And I was like, well, I wanted to do a little guilt trip. And, and so we just had a good laugh. But after that, there's just such a trust bond that happened, right? Because it was not that Brody that's what women are so afraid of. Oh my God, when I say that, now he's going to look out for it. No, it was so not that, because he knew that I would speak into it.
You outed yourself, and it took so much courage. And notice the risk there, right? Notice the risk, right? To take the intimacy deeper with him, you had to risk saying that, which could blow things up. But at the same time, look at what it did to your relationship. It brought it deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we even telling people, like, do some sort of shadow ceremony, something where you acknowledge everything you don't want to acknowledge, everything that you don't want to be seen as, like whatever, as selfish or arrogant, or I don't know what it is, you know what I mean? Whatever you judge yourself for, say, I can be a selfish bitch. Okay, call it a day. But now you said it versus trying to be something else and then getting the withdrawals from the trust bank account, what we talked about.
Right. Yeah. And what I'm noticing too, as you're talking about this, if we're just to back up and look at in my head, I'm thinking, what must Antia believe about relationship in order to have this kind of courage and to talk about integrating her shadow in this? And I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, you must really hold that relationship is a platform for you to do your best inner work.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That platform is a place for you to really up level your consciousness and grow as a human being.
But something inside of me knew that if I can really be myself, like if I can be completely transparent, it's not going to last. So in that way, I didn't have anything to lose. Like I was 100% sure it's not going to last because I would not feel safe. Let's talk about that.
Wow. Wonderful. That's it. Yeah. Well, so what pops to mind immediately, and I heard another coach say this a while back, many years ago, and it's always stuck with me. And what's interesting is that he said, it's not that people can't deal with the inevitable chaos and the ups and downs of the relationship. It's what people can't deal with, and what people end up leaving relationships for is when they're so confused, they don't know where they stand with the other person. That's what is actually completely intolerable, is when you don't know what the heck is going on. And so you have to get out of it. And the whole idea of not knowing what is going on is this massive feeling of just, there's no safety in it. There's no safety in it, right? But if you know where you stand with somebody, if you know that person's angry with you, if you know that person has a problem or there's a boundary or you're feeling this or that, and you're in communication about it. Right? You can have blowout fights. You can have times when you're taking space and the two of you are questioning the relationship. But if you're honest and transparent about it, there's a foundation of safety there, because at least you have a shared reality about what's going on. But the moment you're lying to yourself and to the other person, and you're not in right relationship with the truth, there may not be these fights on the surface, but you're not on the same page. And that's often where relationships and connections end up just completely falling apart.
Wow, I'm sure that's such a breakthrough right there for some of the women, because we got it all backwards, right? We're like, oh, once we're all clarity, and that's very vulnerable to be that visible and to be that transparent that our partner knows where we are. Yes. But what a great distinction that is.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, that was co-created right there for sure.
No, take all the credit for it, you know.
All right, I'll take all the credit for it. Or the coach friend that I had who can take credit for it. So I think that this is a good segue to move into trusting the masculine a bit. I want to just talk about, so we're talking a little bit about the benefits of trusting for the woman, right? Is what this does to you and what it can do to the relationship and the potential and the way that it creates a runway for the relationship to really take off and reach new heights. And from a man's perspective, I want to just talk about the gift that is given to a man when you trust him. When you trust a man and this man is in connection with you, what you are essentially declaring into the space between the two of you is, I want you to show up and have total freedom to show up as your best self or whoever it is that you feel is your deepest truth. And I'm not going to sit back here and try to control you. I'm not going to sit back here and think less of you. I'm choosing to not look at you through my baggage or past insecurities that you now have to try to escape out from underneath. Because oftentimes, if someone's not trusting you, they're looking at you through an old, outdated lens if you haven't done anything wrong. And for the man, the experience of that is, I feel like in connection with this woman, I'm constantly on the defense trying to prove to her that I'm not who she thinks I am. And then therefore there's no room for him to actually step into his integrity. There's no room for him to actually step into his best self.
Yeah.
And that makes sense so far?
Yeah. I mean, I even see that with, I call it the wild man archetype, right? Where the men are constantly on the defense. Oh, I can't really be too angry, or I can't really be too physical because I'm constantly,
Yes.
And so he's what is it called? Compromising his integrity. Yep.
And she doesn't even create a place for his integrity to come online. You get to see a man's character when you finally trust him. You actually get to see what a man is fully made of when you finally choose to trust him. And wouldn't it be great to know who you're dating? Wouldn't it be great to actually give the man the opportunity to show you exactly who he is by you just opening up and saying, okay, I believe you are the man.
Yeah.
I would prefer it if you don't prove me wrong, but I trust that, here, show me who you are.
Yeah.
And see, the beauty of this is that trusting a guy then for a woman can become the ultimate way to qualify who are quality men and who are not. And the more that you don't trust, the harder it is to actually see who you're dealing with.
And you walk away with so many what ifs, right? Like what would have happened kind of
right.
scenarios.
Oh my God, you got it. That's it. Yeah. You walk away thinking the suspicion in your mind is, maybe I didn't give him a chance. Maybe if I just would have been a little bit less defended, I would have seen a side of him that would have been a little bit more loving. But because I wasn't clean and clear over here, I was looking at him through a distorted lens. And now I'm questioning whether or not I let go of a good guy.
Yep. And how painful is that, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I would rather risk than wonder what would have happened. Right. And do you have a story of a woman that you worked with who you were able to help with that piece to really trust again?
Yeah, I do. And I would say that this is at the core of almost all of the coaching that I end up doing with women. One in particular, I would say is, I'll keep her name out of the session, obviously, here.
Of course, yeah.
But one woman she was convinced that if she were to tell this man how she felt about him, that somehow he would take advantage of her and that she would be rejected, that he would take advantage of her vulnerability, and the place that she would be delivered to by his rejection would be so much worse, right? She would be faced with all of these feelings of, oh my God, I really am unlovable. And all of these accusations that she had in her mind. So through helping her begin to see that by her showing up and bringing her voice, her heart into the relationship, in actually risking, it actually makes this guy feel safe enough to be able to open up and feel like there's actually a way in for him to lead.
Right.
See, it's very difficult for a man to feel like he's enabled to lead the relationship and to commit more fully and to devote himself when he doesn't feel like you trust him.
Right.
It's hard for him to be enabled and empowered to be a leader in the relationship. And so after our conversation, we discovered some of the accusations she had in her mind, some of the things from her past that had her stopping and in the way of her trusting that her voice and asking for what she wants would not be dangerous. She was able to go into the connection with him, and she ended up having she wanted a 15-minute conversation with him because things were fizzling out at this point. That was the
Right.
ecology of the relationship. Things were starting to fizzle out. They weren't moving any deeper. They had been dating for a little while. There was definitely a connection there, but things weren't moving forward. And so she was able to lay it out powerfully, not from a place of desperation, not from a place of, please, I want this, please give this to me,
Right.
but more just like, listen, I haven't been fully honest, and I need you to know how I'm feeling. I want you to know what I see in you, and I don't think I've been completely clear with you on that. And just laid it out. And next thing you know, the conversation turned into a 3-hour-long deep dive. And they were talking about their future. They were talking about buying a home in a foreign country. And yeah, everything began to just completely move to a whole new level there. And that was a result of seeing that these places that you're often afraid, and these things that you're often afraid to say, that fear is actually a sign that it may be a portal to deeper intimacy.
Yeah, totally. Like I sometimes call fear like the last minute ego freak out. Right. So where like the ego is like, it's like that last chance, last call when you're in a bar, right? Like
I love that.
That's how I say, oh, this is great. You're freaking out. This is awesome. There's going to be so much goodness on the other side. Right. But I know it's easier. I know it's easy for me to say that I'm on the other side. So I get the fear. And I have to tell you, I had a situation with a guy before I met my husband who I told how I felt. And he was in tears. I mean, he ended up picking someone else because when he started seeing her and whatever, but just something magical happened. And I had that same story. I was like, are you talking about me? Because I had that same story. Yeah. I can't be emotional with men. When I just smile at them, they will know I'm interested. So I need to make sure I'm always sort of aloof, almost half walking away, and that was like my biggest breakthrough was when this guy was like in tears pretty much. And he's like, I've never had a woman be that like present and open, emotional with me. And honestly, afterwards, I didn't know if he told me that he wants a relationship with me or not, because just that deep bond, that authenticity and that trust, that was built, that was actually true love because it was not an agenda.
Wow.
Right? There was no agenda because he went with someone else, but we both still were like so open with each other.
Wow.
Because I could have said, oh, in that case, okay, but you know what I mean? Like I'm closing my heart, right. but I stayed open, right?
There it is. That's it. In Antia, it's like one of the most important and I think critical things for us to learn as people. I know for me to learn, I'll speak from a subjective experience, but learning how to move into life and be committed to staying open and committed to having an open heart, regardless of what is happening out there. Yeah. And not allowing something outside of me to make my heart close. Yeah. Right. But keeping it open and realizing that maybe the truth of what's happening in that connection with that man isn't a committed, monogamous, long-term relationship. Perhaps the truth in that moment is you learning a valuable lesson about how to honor courage in your heart over fear. And in that moment, Antia, I have no doubt that you probably transformed from actually stepping into that and saying that. And you are no longer, from doing that, the person you were before that is markedly different than the person you are on the other side of that. And that is the result. Not whether or not this guy's saying, oh, I want to be in a relationship with you now, right? But the gold is within you now. And that's, I think, something I want to just underscore for anybody listening, that all of this, there's so many gems and pearls when you speak your truth that have they don't have to, the gems and pearls aren't in the result that you get from making other people do things. Right. It's from who you become on this journey.
Oh, 100%. That it's so true. It's absolutely true. Oh, I could talk with you forever. We're already way over, but it doesn't matter. It was so
Yeah.
amazing and so needed. So ladies, I just really want you to probably watch this again. There's so much here. And I want you to really be honest with yourself, where you are with trusting men and trusting yourself. And do you have like one golden nugget for the ladies before we're going into your gift that you have for them too? But what's some golden nugget that they can, take struggling right now, not struggling with their own trust issues, right? And that's what attracting the emotionally unavailable men. So what would you tell them?
Yeah. The gold nugget, I would say, is two things. One, start to play more in your life. Start to find places where you can just completely play and be a kid. And two, start to look at dating and relationships as an experiment rather than something that you need to go do. Yeah. Right? Approach it with a complete experimental mindset where it's not about, hey, I'm trying to organize myself in a way where I can get this result, but rather, you know what? I'm going to take some of these ideas that I learned from the summit and I'm going to go have fun with them. Right. I'm going to go out, and it's not about the result. It's actually just, I'm going to go get a result, and whether the result is good or bad, I'm actually getting more in touch with the truth by going out there and taking action. So go mess up a bunch, go have fun, go on a number of dates, go waste some time, go just be single if you want. Maybe don't date for a couple months. It's not going anywhere. Right? Work on that connection with yourself. Work on honoring that deep commitment that you have towards yourself to build the best life and the best relationship you can with your heart. And all of the things outside of you will begin to fall into place.
Oh, so true. What wisdom. Absolutely. So for the ladies who are like, gosh, they're glued to the screen, like just they're hanging on your every word on your tongue, like what is it that you have for them to continue to be in your world and take advantage of much more wisdom that you have to share with them?
Yeah. Well, there is a webinar that I put on with another fellow coach of mine called The 3 Keys to Attracting and Keeping a High Quality Man. And it is, I'd say, 60 to 90 minutes of some of the best content that I've produced in the last year. And it talks about the unconscious roles that women play unknowingly that block love. We talk about what's going on inside of a guy's mind, the one question that he might be asking that has him determine whether he commits or not. And we talk about feminine vulnerability in a way that, and from an angle that is different than anything you've heard. So I would highly encourage the gals on this call to spend some time, knock off an evening to just listen to this webinar. It's incredibly valuable. And I believe life-changing from many of the women that have attended and the feedback I've gotten.
So powerful, just alone to know the unconscious roles that you play. I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting, because it's unconscious. Right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Clayton. It's been
thank you.
Joy, and it's really been jogging my memory, my heart, my mind. And I'm sure when it does that for me, already being married and being in a relationship, I can only imagine what it does for all the single women out there. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for being so engaging and just sharing your personal stories. They're incredibly heartfelt and valuable to anybody listening.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. All right, ladies. So this is it for today, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care.